Okay. On the count of three, that's one. Hold on, hold on. That's all right. Take two. On the count of three, one, two, three. Camera roll, Raul. You can start with your recordings.
A Midwest trial attorney takes on the case of his career, defending an abused wife, Jean, on trial for the alleged murder of her abusive husband, John. My name is Raul Revord. I am a retired trial attorney, and I was the lawyer that defended this lady in this murder trial. I in the book that I've written concerning the case, I adopted the name David Chartier. It's Chartier. The story that is involved in the book Beyond Terror brings real enlightenment of the spousal abuse syndrome in an abusive environment and the probable life-threatening consequences where professional help is not sought or is unavailable. The story will cause the audience to have an understanding of the dangerous changes in personality that can occur following a closed head injury and or alcoholism. The changes in personality were also experienced by NFL football players who have been diagnosed with concussions. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. In the span of 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence. Those facts are brought out by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. This story will, the audience will recognize the roles family members play in a dysfunctional home and the rules that they follow, trying to stay safe, which actually perpetuates and enables the continuation of the dysfunction. The audience will recognize that alone they are powerless to change how their partner wants to think or feel without professional help. The abusive spouse is destined to experience continued abusive treatment from the abusive spouse if nothing changes. They must do something different if they're going to have any hopes of escaping that violence. The audience will witness the ultimate non-effective confrontation of the wife, in this case, attempting to get her drunken husband out of the house until he could sober up. She, having been beaten many times, refused to be beaten again. In the past, she had suffered a fractured skull, a broken arm, 3 broken ribs, and 2 heart attacks. In September 1984, he had assaulted her numerous times, threatening to kill her and other family members, and then commit suicide. She, having a small caliber rifle at her right hip, intended only to scare him, but when he charged her, reaching for the rifle, the shot was fired, killing him, but saving her life, the life of her brother, and the life of their 17-year-old son. The prosecution's theory in the case was that Jean was at the threshold of the bedroom door with a rifle that she pointed at her husband as he sat on the bed 5 feet away. and aimed the rifle in a downward direction without justification or excuse and shot and killed him. The defense theory, however, of the case is that John Davis was assaulted against all family members, was drunk, and threatening to kill them all, and that Jean did not intend to kill John, but wanted him to leave the house until he could sober up, possessing the rifle at her right hip, pointed in an upward direction, only to convince him to leave the house, but refusing to be beaten again when he rushed her, threatening to take the gun and kill them all. Jean's intent was to stop him from getting the gun when the shot was fired, striking John in the upper left chest. The trajectory of the bullet on its way to the body was upward, striking a rib and going downward inside John's body. The muzzle of the rifle was only 12 to 18 inches distant from John's body, as opposed to 5 feet, as alleged by the prosecution. David realized that the only way to successfully defend the case was to disprove or at least present credible ballistic evidence challenging the findings of the Michigan State Forensic Ballistic Team. It was clear to David that their ballistic expert focused only on the downward trajectory of the fatal bullet on the inside of John's body and did not consider the trajectory of the bullet on its way to the body, which would support Jean's statement that John was on his feet charging her at a very short distance when the shot was fired, leaving gunpowder residue at the entrance wound and taking a downward trajectory after striking a rib in the upper chest of John Davis. It was clear that I would need a ballistic expert to conduct ballistic testing to provide evidence that would support Jean's version of the facts, raising a reasonable doubt as to the prosecution's theory of the case. I called a professor of ballistics teaching at California State University in Sacramento, California. He agreed to conduct ballistic testing of the rifle to determine distance and bullet trajectory and to travel to Michigan to testify at Jean's trial. Next, I contacted Dr. Carl Bergman, a psychiatrist in Lansing, Michigan, who once examined and later testified in a trial where a wife had killed her husband by pouring kerosene around his bed as he was sleeping off a drunken stupor and lit the house on fire. The psychiatrist found her to be temporarily insane, and a jury acquitted her. Dr. Bergman did not find Jean to be insane, but testified that at the instant the shot was fired, she was in dire fear of her life beyond terror. Lastly, I wanted to have an expert in domestic violence to help the jury to understand domestic violence and specifically the spousal abuse syndrome and determine if the principles of the dysfunction were at play in the lives of Jean and John on the night in question that may help a jury to understand the dynamics of the syndrome and how it impacted Jean's perception of events of the evening that she shot her husband. The psychiatrist agreed to see Jean and testify at trial if her testimony was thought to be helpful. David, I felt thankful that I was able to locate and select 3 expert witnesses having good credentials and who would come to the trial to testify. After a month-long trial, The jury returned a verdict of not guilty to first degree murder, not guilty of second degree murder, not guilty of voluntary manslaughter, but guilty of negligent discharge of a firearm with death resulting. She was sentenced to 6 months to 15 years in a woman's prison in downstate Michigan, but she was released after just 40 days on order of the judge and to be driven home the following morning in a prison van. She called her son before leaving the prison and was so excited at the prospect of seeing her 17-year-old son again and being a good mother for him. It was about 3 p.m. when she arrived at her country home in the farming country and trudged through 8 inches of snow to reach the kitchen door, the rear kitchen door, whereupon she called out, "Robert, honey, I'm home," and was just about to call his name again when Robert enters the kitchen carrying a high powered rifle and said to his mother, "Welcome home, Ma. You shouldn't have shot Dad," and raised the rifle and shot his mother through the chest, blowing a hole the size of a grapefruit, killing her instantly. As Robert looked at his mother lying on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood, he bolted from the kitchen door while sobbing aloud and ran across the snow-covered rear 40 in his stocking feet to a brush pile where his dad had once hidden from the police. He sat on the snow-covered brush pile and placed the muzzle of the rifle in his mouth, and with the aid of a stick, pushed the trigger, blowing his head and brains all over the snow-covered brush pile. This story ends with heavier snow filling the air and falling on Robert's body as it lay on the brush pile after having fulfilled the threats of his father.
Good, roll. Okay, all good.
Fun to take